The year was 2847, and humanity had been part of the Galactic Council for exactly 43 years. In the grand scale of cosmic politics, they were babies. Newcomers. The 300 species that made up the Council had walked among the stars for thousands of years. Some had been spacefaring for millions. Humans were tolerated, given a single seat at the great table, but never truly respected. Ambassador Elena Vasquez understood this reality every single day. She worked from Nexus Station, Earth's small diplomatic outpost on the edge of Council space. The station was modest compared to the grand embassies of older races. While the Valith hegemony had floating palaces and the crystalline arbiters had structures that sang with light, humanity had functional rooms and recycled air. Elena did not mind. She believed in the slow work of building trust. She believed that one day, humanity would earn its place among the stars. That belief died on a Tuesday. Mourning her aide, Marcus burst through her office door without knocking. His face was white as paper. His hands were shaking. Elena had never seen him like this in 15 years of working together. "Ambassador," he said, his voice breaking. "The Morning Star. They destroyed the Morning Star." Elena felt the world tilt beneath her feet. The Morning Star was a civilian transport vessel. It carried colonists, scientists, families, to the research station at Kepler's Reach. She had personally signed the departure clearances 3 weeks ago. "Who?" she asked, though part of her already knew. "The Valith Enforcement Fleet. They say the ship entered restricted space." Elena pulled up the navigation logs on her display. The Morning Star had followed its approved route exactly. Every checkpoint, every beacon, every turn had been by the book. Then she saw it. A notification buried in Council communications, sent just 6 hours before the Morning Star reached the coordinates where it died. The Valith had requested an emergency boundary change. The Council had approved it without discussion. No one had informed human channels. The ship had crossed an invisible line that had not existed when it launched. 47 people were dead. Elena read through the passenger manifest with growing horror. Scientists who had spent their lives studying alien ecosystems, engineers traveling to help build a new telescope array, families hoping to start fresh on a distant world. And there, highlighted by Marcus with trembling hands, a photograph that would soon spread across every human network in the galaxy. Lily Chen, age 7. Dark pigtails. A gap-toothed smile. A stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest. She had been traveling with her parents to join her grandfather on Kepler's Reach. Her grandfather was Admiral James Chen, retired. One of the most respected officers in Earth's small fleet. Elena stared at that. Photographed for a long time. She requested an audience with the High Council. Protocol required at least 30 days for non-emergency sessions. She invoked the Emergency Grievance Clause, a rarely used provision that guaranteed a hearing within 72 hours. The Council granted her 12 minutes. In 3 days. Those 3 days were the longest of Elena's life. She prepared her arguments carefully. She gathered evidence. She documented every failure in communication, every missed notification, every procedural shortcut that had led to the Morning Star's destruction. She practiced her speech until she could deliver it in her sleep. When the day came, she walked into the Council chamber and felt very small. The room was vast beyond human comprehension. It had been built to accommodate 300 species, some of whom existed on scales that dwarfed human understanding. The crystalline arbiters towered above like living mountains of light. The Valith delegation sat in their section, scales gleaming, showing no sign of concern or regret. 1,000 alien eyes watched as Elena took her place at the petitioner's platform. High Arbiter Voranthos spoke first. His voice resonated through the chamber like wind through crystal caves. The human delegation may present its grievance. You have 12 standard minutes. Lena spoke clearly and carefully. She presented the evidence. She showed the timeline. She demonstrated beyond any doubt that the Morning Star had been following its approved course, that the boundary change had been made without proper notification, that 47 innocent people had died because of bureaucratic failure. She spoke of justice. She spoke of accountability. She spoke of the need for the council to acknowledge its mistake and ensure nothing like this ever happened again. When she finished, silence filled the chamber. High Arbiter. Vorenthos conferred briefly with his fellow arbiters. Then he turned his crystalline form toward Alina, and she saw something in his ancient eyes that made her blood run cold. Not anger, not sympathy. Dismissal. Complete and utter dismissal. The matter has been reviewed, Vorenthos said. The human vessel was in violation of sovereign territory. The Valith response was within acceptable parameters. We recognize the loss of life and extend appropriate condolences. However, the boundary change was lawfully executed. The responsibility lies with the Human Navigation Authority for failing to maintain current information. Elena's voice was steady when she replied. High Arbiter, with respect, the notification window was 6 hours. Our vessel was already in transit. There was no possible way for our navigation authority to inform the crew in time. Then, perhaps, Vorenthos said, his light pulsing with what might have been impatience. Human vessels should not travel so close to restricted zones. Your species is young, Ambassador. You will learn that the galaxy does not bend to sentiment. The matter is closed. The words echoed through the chamber. Around the room, representatives of 300 species watched with varying degrees of interest, boredom, or quiet satisfaction. Not one voice rose in support of humanity. Not one question was asked about the dead. Not one demand was made for better procedures. 47 lives. Dismissed in 12 minutes, Alina returned to Earth with those words burned into her memory. She delivered her report to the World Council in a voice that did not shake, though her hands did. She watched the faces of Earth's leaders as they absorbed the news. She saw grief turn to anger, and anger turn to something colder, something harder. She did not know that while she spoke far beneath the ice of Antarctica, in vaults that had been sealed for longer than human recorded history. Ancient systems were detecting the emotional resonance of billions of grieving humans. She did not know that genetic markers buried in human DNA were beginning to activate, triggered by a specific pattern of collective trauma and rage. She did not know that deep in the asteroid belt, in the frozen oceans of Europa, in shielded chambers within the sun itself, machines older than the Council's oldest, records were receiving a signal they had waited 1,000 years to hear. The silence was ending, and the galaxy was about to remember what humanity truly was. Director Samuel Okonkwo had spent 30 years in the United Earth Archives. His job was to catalog humanity's quiet history among the stars. He documented first contact events, diplomatic exchanges, and trade agreements. It was careful work, detailed work, and Samuel loved it. He had heard the old stories, of course. Everyone had whispered legends about a time before the silence, when humanity had supposedly been something more than newcomers fumbling through the galaxy. Some people believed these stories. Samuel did not. He was a scientist, a historian. He dealt in facts and evidence, not myths. Then the summons came. It arrived at 3 in the morning, encoded with security protocols Samuel had never seen before. Priority Alpha. Eyes only. Report immediately to coordinates in the Saharan Reclamation Zone. Samuel took a transport pod across the Mediterranean and landed in what appeared to be empty desert. Sand stretched in every direction under the cold stars. He was about to check his coordinates when the ground opened beneath his feet. An elevator carried him down, and down, and down further still. He passed through 17 security checkpoints, each one requiring different forms of identification. Retinal scans, voice prints, DNA samples. At the final door, the system requested something impossible. It asked for a ginlock from a bloodline that had been officially extinct for 3 centuries. The door opened anyway. Recognizing something in Samuel's blood that he had never known existed. The chamber beyond was vast and dark. The walls were covered in writing, symbols, and characters that predated every human language by at least 50,000 years. Samuel stared at them, his historian's mind struggling to process what he was seeing. These symbols should have been meaningless to him. They were older than the pyramids, older than cave paintings, older than anything human, yet he could read them. The knowledge rose in his mind like a dream half remembered. The symbols spoke of departure, choice, of a great silence embraced willingly, so that others might grow without the shadow of elders blocking their sun. They spoke of seeds planted in blood and bone, waiting for the day when the children would need to become parents once again. "We kept our promise," said a voice from the shadows. Samuel turned to see a woman stepping forward. She wore the uniform of Earth's military, with the insignia of a general. Her name tag read Tanaka. Her face was that of someone in their 50s, but her eyes were wrong. They were too old, too deep, holding memories that spanned ages. "General Yuki Tanaka," she said, extending her hand, "though that title is fairly new. I've had others, many others, over the years." "Who are you?" Samuel whispered. "I'm what you might call a keeper. There are several of us scattered across human populations. We don't age quite like others do. Our job is to remember, to wait, and to ensure that when the time comes, humanity can find its way back to what it once was." She walked past him and placed her hand on a pedestal of dark metal that Samuel had not noticed before. The chamber exploded with light. Holographic displays materialized in the air. They showed shipyards hidden in places humanity had supposedly never built. There were construction facilities carved into asteroids in the belt, vast hangars buried beneath the ice of Europa, and something that looked almost alive sleeping in the chromosphere of the sun itself. Ships filled these hidden places. Ships unlike anything humanity officially possessed. Ships that made the Council's proudest dreadnoughts look like children's toys. "The Valeth flagship is 2 kilometers long," General Tanaka said calmly. "It's considered one of the most powerful vessels in Council space. The smallest ship in our ancient fleet is 3 kilometers. The largest is 27. Samuel's legs gave out. He sat down heavily on the cold floor, his mind reeling. "This is impossible," he said. "We've been spacefaring for 400 years. We discovered faster-than-light travel by accident. We stumbled into the galactic community like lost children. That's our history. That's the truth. That's the story we told ourselves," Tanaka replied. "And for 50,000 years, it was the story we needed to believe. But it was never the complete truth." She pulled up a new display. This one showed the galaxy as it had been long ago, the territories marked in colors that meant nothing to modern stellar cartography. One color dominated the map. It spread across thousands of systems, touching every corner of the galaxy. "We called ourselves the Gardeners," Tanaka said. "Though other species had other names for us. The eldest, the teachers, the first walkers. We did not conquer. We did not rule. We helped. When young species looked up at the stars for the first time, we were there to guide them. When civilizations struggled, we offered wisdom. When wars threatened to burn the galaxy, we stepped between the fires and taught the children to make peace." "What happened?" Samuel asked. "Why did we stop?" Tanaka was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was heavy with an ancient sadness. "We were too successful. The younger races grew dependent on us. They stopped making their own choices, solving their own problems, finding their own paths. We realized that our presence had become a prison. As long as we were there, they would never truly become what they were meant to be." She turned to face Samuel, and in her eyes he saw the weight of a decision made by people dead for millennia. "So we chose to leave. Not through war or disaster, but through forgetting. We hid our technology, locked away our memories, and let ourselves become children again. We scattered seeds throughout our population, genetic triggers that would lie dormant unless activated by specific conditions. We trusted that if the galaxy ever truly needed the gardeners again, the seeds would bloom. And now?" Samuel asked, though he already knew the answer. "Now the Council has killed 47 of our people and called it acceptable. Now they have murdered a child and dismissed it as sentiment. Now the galaxy has shown us what it became without us." Tanaka's voice hardened. "The seeds have recognized what this means. Across human space, people are remembering. Scientists are suddenly understanding technology they never learned. Engineers are drawing blueprints for ships they have never seen. Military officers are recalling tactics from wars that happened before the Council's ancestors crawled from their oceans. She pressed another control on the pedestal. In the hidden shipyards throughout the solar system, ancient vessels began to stir. Lights that had been dark for 50,000 years flickered on. Engines that had slept through the rise and fall of countless civilizations hummed back to life. "We never wanted this," Tanaka said softly. "We left because we loved the younger races and wanted them to grow. But they have not grown. They have become cruel and careless. They have forgotten what law was meant to protect and turned it into a weapon." She looked at Samuel with eyes that held millennia of hope and sorrow. "Director Okonkwo, humanity is waking up. The Council will soon learn that the newcomers they dismissed are older than their oldest memories. And then they will have to answer a question they never expected to face." "What question?" Samuel asked. Tanaka smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "What happens when the parents come home and find that the children have been very, very badly behaved?" Far above them, breaking through the ice of Antarctica, the first ship of the ancient fleet rose toward the stars. Its name was written on its hull in a language that humanity had forgotten, but was quickly remembering. The name translated simply as hope. And it was only the beginning. The first reports reached the Galactic Council through normal intelligence channels. Human ships were gathering near their home system. The Council's observers noted the activity with mild interest and no concern. What could humanity possibly do? Their fleet consisted of a few dozen patrol vessels and some converted cargo haulers. Against the combined might of 300 species, they were nothing. High Arbiter Varanthos received the reports and dismissed them with the crystalline equivalent of a shrug. If the humans wanted to rattle their tiny sabers, let them. It would serve as a useful reminder of their place in the cosmic order. Then the ships began to emerge. On the dark side of Luna, where no human installation had ever been registered, the ground split open. Something rose from beneath the ancient dust. It was a ship, but the word seemed inadequate. 3 kilometers of obsidian and silver, its hull covered in symbols that glowed with soft blue light. Its design matched nothing in Council databases. Its power signature was off the charts. The ship broadcast its identification on all frequencies. HSS Prometheus, in the Council's Intelligence Center, analysts scrambled to understand what they were seeing. They ran the ship's profile through every database they had. Military vessels, civilian craft, pirate configurations, ancient wreckage. Nothing matched. Nothing even came close. Then Europa's ice cracked open, and another ship emerged. Then 6 more rose from the asteroid belt. Then something vast and terrible climbed out of the sun itself, trailing solar fire like a cape of living flame. Within 6 hours, 17 capital ships had revealed themselves. 43 cruisers followed, then 200 support vessels. The ancient fleet assembled in formation around Earth, their combined mass larger than some small moons. Every ship bore the same symbol on its hull, a human hand open and reaching toward the stars. The analyst recognized it from old records, fragments of pre-council history that most scholars considered myth. It was the mark of the gardeners, the eldest teachers, the first walkers. It was the symbol of a species that had supposedly vanished before the Council's ancestors had learned to make fire. High Arbiter Varanthos called an emergency session. For the first time in 3,000 years, fear echoed through the crystal halls. The 300 gathered in chaos. Species that had not spoken to each other in centuries found themselves huddled together, sharing worried glances. The Valeth delegation, normally so proud and certain, sat in visible distress. Their scales had gone pale, a sign of deep anxiety. "This is impossible," declared Representative Kethrel of the Valeth hegemony. His voice cracked as he spoke. "The gardeners are legends. Myths told to frighten children. These humans have been spacefaring for 400 years. They are primitives. They cannot be what these ships suggest." "And yet," Varanthos replied, his light flickering in ways that suggested profound uncertainty, "our archives confirm the match. The genetic markers in human DNA are identical to fragments we recovered from Gardner ruins. The ship's signatures match the temple fragments exactly. The mathematical principles underlying their technology are the same ones carved into monuments we have studied for millennia without understanding. Then the monuments were planted, Kethril insisted. A deception. A long game played by these humans to trick us. For 50,000 years, another representative asked. They deceived us before we existed. The chamber fell silent. There was no good answer to that question. Then every screen in the Nexus lit up. Every display, every personal device, every communication system. A single face appeared on all of them. Admiral James Chen was an old man. His hair was white, his face lined with decades of service, but his eyes burned with something that made even the ancient arbiters uncomfortable. It was grief. It was fury. And beneath both of those, it was something worse. It was disappointment. 43 years ago, Admiral Chen began, his voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the galaxy. Humanity rejoined the galactic community. We asked only to learn, to trade, to grow alongside you. We remembered nothing of what we once were. The silence was complete. We were children again, excited and hopeful, eager to make friends among the stars. His image was replaced by footage. The Morning Star, a small civilian vessel, peaceful and unaware. The Valith enforcement fleet, weapons charging. The moment of destruction, captured from a dozen angles by automated systems. You killed 47 people, Admiral Chen continued. Scientists, engineers, families. You killed them because they crossed a line that did not exist when they started their journey. You killed them because updating your notification systems properly was too much trouble. You killed them because human lives were not worth the effort of following your own procedures. The footage changed. Now it showed Lily Chen's face, her smile, her pigtails, her stuffed rabbit. This is my granddaughter, Admiral Chen said, and his voice finally cracked. She was 7 years old. She was traveling to see me. She wanted to show me a drawing she had made of our ship. She was going to be an explorer, she told her mother. She was going to find new stars. 300 watched in silence. Some had never seen a human cry before. They watched as this old man, this commander of an impossible fleet, wiped tears from his eyes with a trembling hand. We asked for justice, he continued. Your High Arbiter told us that the galaxy does not bend to sentiment. He told us that our concerns were dismissed. He told us to learn our place. Admiral Chen's expression hardened. We have learned it. The ancient fleet began to move. Not toward the Council Core. Not toward Valith's space. They moved toward the Nexus itself, the heart of galactic diplomacy. It's the station where the 300 gathered to govern the stars. You forgot who we were, Admiral Chen said. You forgot who taught you to walk among the stars. You forgot who helped your ancestors build the first ships, write the first laws, dream the first dreams of peace. So now, we are coming to remind you. He leaned forward, and every being watching felt the weight of his gaze. We do not come for war. We do not come for conquest. We do not come for revenge. We come for something much harder to give. We come for reckoning. We come to ask you a question that you have avoided for too long. The feed paused. The galaxy held its breath. What kind of civilization murders a child and calls it acceptable? What kind of justice dismisses grief as sentiment? What kind of law protects the powerful while crushing the innocent? Admiral Chen stood. We taught you better than this. And now, one way or another, you will remember. The transmission ended. The ancient fleet continued its approach, and in the council chamber, 300 species began to realize that the universe they thought they understood had never existed at all. The Nexus. Station hung in the void like a jewel in the darkness. Around it, the combined defensive fleet of 18 council species had assembled. Over 400 warships representing the greatest military alliance in 3 centuries. Dreadnoughts, the size of small cities. Carriers launching endless waves of fighters. Weapons platforms bristling with enough firepower to crack planets. The Council had responded to the human threat with overwhelming force. This would be a demonstration, they told themselves. The upstart humans would see the true power of the galactic order and understand their mistake. The ancient fleet emerged from fold space in perfect formation. 17 capital ships, 43 cruisers, 200 support vessels. They were outnumbered more than 2 to 1. Hi, Arbiter. Varenthos opened communications from his flagship, the Crystalline Throne. His voice rang with authority and power. Humans, he declared, whatever your origins, you now stand against the united will of the Galactic Council. Your claims to ancient heritage are noted but irrelevant to the current situation. You have mobilized military forces against Sovereign Council territory. This is an act of war. He paused, allowing his words to echo across the void. Withdraw your vessels immediately. Return to Earth. Accept a tribunal's judgment for your aggression. This is your only warning. Refuse, and you will face annihilation. Your ancient ships, however impressive, cannot stand against the combined might of 300 civilizations. Admiral Chen's response came after a long moment of silence. Arbiter Varenthos, I'm going to show you something. Please watch carefully. This will only take a moment. The Prometheus, the great flagship of the ancient fleet, turned slightly. Its weapons systems activated. Council's sensors screamed warnings as power levels spiked to readings that made no physical sense. The ship fired once. A single beam of light lanced across the void. It was white, pure, almost gentle in its appearance. It touched the Sovereign's pride, the Valeth flagship, the most powerful warship in the hegemony's arsenal. 3 kilometers of armor and weapons, crewed by 3,000 of the Veleth's finest warriors. The ship did not explode. It did not shatter or burn or break. Apart in flames, it simply ... stopped. Every system aboard the Sovereign's Pride went dark. Weapons, engines, life support, communications, everything. 3,000 Valeth soldiers found themselves floating in emergency lighting. Their mighty vessel transformed into an inert tomb drifting through space. They were alive. They were unharmed. But they were utterly powerless. We called this the Shepherd's Touch, Admiral Chen explained calmly. We developed it long ago, when we first began teaching the younger races. We found that some species only understood lessons when they came with consequences. But we never believed in killing to make a point. Ships can be disabled. Weapons can be silenced. Threats can be neutralized without a single life being lost. He paused. We never had to kill Arbiter. And we don't intend to start now. One by one, the ancient fleet targeted the Council Armada. One by one, the mighty warships went dark. Cruisers became silent tombs. Dreadnoughts drifted helplessly. Fighters fell still in the void, their pilots alive, but unable to do anything but watch. The Council's commanders ordered desperate counterattacks. Weapons fired at the ancient ships. Missiles launched in swarms. Energy beams powerful enough to melt asteroids stabbed through space. None of it mattered. The ancient ships did not dodge. They did not need to. Shields that had been designed to withstand the heat of stars absorbed every attack without flickering. The Prometheus took a direct hit from a planet cracker cannon and did not even slow down. Within 1 hour, the greatest military force the Council had ever assembled was completely disabled. 400 warships, drifting silently, their crews alive but helpless. Not a single being had died. Not a single ship had been destroyed. The ancient fleet held the nexus with an unconscious enemy surrounding them like fallen leaves. Admiral Chen transported to the station with a small escort. They were not soldiers in the traditional sense. There were no weapons visible, no armor, no obvious threat. His companions were historians, scientists, diplomats, people who had studied the old ways and remembered the old purposes. The doors to the council chamber opened before them. The 300 watched as the old man walked to the central speaking platform, the place where petitioners stood to beg for the council's attention. He climbed the steps slowly, his age showing in every movement. But when he turned to face the assembled species, there was nothing weak about him. 3 days ago, he said, Ambassador Vasquez stood in this chamber and asked for justice. She presented evidence. She documented failures. She spoke for 47 dead innocents who deserved to be remembered. He looked at High Arbiter Varenthos, whose crystalline form had dimmed considerably since the battle. You gave her 12 minutes. You told her that the galaxy does not bend to sentiment. You told her that the matter was closed. Admiral Chen reached into his coat and produced a small device. When he activated it, a holographic document appeared in the air. It was old. Impossibly old. The language it was written in predated every current council species by thousands of generations. This is the original charter of the Galactic Council, Admiral Chen said. The real one. Not the version that has been edited and amended over the millennia. The document that established the principles upon which your civilization was supposed to be built. He pointed to a section near the bottom. There are signatures here. 312 founding species, each pledging to uphold the values of justice, compassion, and mutual respect. Most of those species are long extinct. But one signature remains relevant. He enlarged the image. There, among the ancient names, was a symbol that every being in the chamber now recognized. The open hand reaching toward the stars. Humanity helped build this institution, Admiral Chen said. We believed that the younger races would grow into wisdom. We trusted that the laws we helped write would protect the innocent, not punish them. We had faith that justice would mean something more than the powerful doing whatever they wished. He lowered the document and looked around the chamber. We were wrong. You did not grow into wisdom. You grew into arrogance. You forgot what law was supposed to mean. You turned justice into a game where only the strong could win. And when a child died because of your carelessness, you dismissed her mother's grief as sentiment unworthy of your attention. The chamber was completely silent. No one moved. No one spoke. So here's what will happen now, Admiral Chen continued. We are not going to destroy you. We are not going to conquer you. We are not going to demand tribute or territory or submission. We are going to do something much harder. He produced another document. This one was new, written in the common trade language that all council species understood. We are going to give you a choice. These are our terms. Not for surrender. For correction. Read them. Discuss them. Decide if the civilization you have built is worth saving. He placed the document on the speaker's podium. We will wait. We have been patient for 50,000 years. We can be patient a little longer. Admiral Chen turned and walked out of the chamber. His escort followed in silence. Behind them, the 300 began to read. And for the first time in millennia, they began to wonder if perhaps they had lost their way. The document that Admiral Chen left behind contained 4 demands. The Council had expected threats of conquest, lists of territories to surrender, impossible tributes that would bankrupt their civilizations. What they found instead was somehow more difficult to accept. The first demand was accountability. Every decision that led to the Morning Star's destruction would be traced. Every official who signed the boundary change without proper notification would be named. Every officer who authorized the use of lethal force against a civilian vessel would be identified. Not for execution. Not for imprisonment. Simply for record. The galaxy would know exactly who had chosen expediency over innocent lives. And that knowledge would follow them forever. The second demand was reform. Council law would be rewritten to prevent this tragedy from ever happening again. No boundary changes would take effect without 30 standard days of notification to all affected species. No lethal force could be authorized against civilian vessels without confirmed evacuation protocols. No grievance could be dismissed without a full tribunal review lasting at least 30 days. These were not new ideas. They were the original principles that the gardeners had helped establish millennia ago. Corrupted over time by convenience and power, the third demand was perhaps the most important. It was called Lily's Law. Any action by any government that resulted in the death of innocent civilians would require a mandatory review by a newly established tribunal of conscience. This tribunal would not be staffed by politicians or military officers. It would be composed of ethicists, historians, philosophers, and ordinary citizens from every member species. Its purpose was not punishment, but understanding. Why did this happen? How can we prevent it? What does this say about who we are? The fourth demand was truth. The full history of the gardeners would be released to every species. Not the myths or the legends, but the real story. How humanity had once walked among the stars as teachers and guides. How they had chosen to step back, to forget, to let the younger races find their own way. How they had trusted the galaxy to grow into wisdom, how that trust had been betrayed. High Arbiter Varenthos read the demands 3 times. Then he called a session of the Inner Council, the 12 most powerful representatives who truly controlled galactic politics. These terms are outrageous, Representative Kethril declared. His scales had returned to their normal color, but his voice was still shaken. They ask us to admit wrongdoing, to accept oversight from philosophers and commoners, to reveal secrets that have been buried for millennia. They ask us to be better, said a quiet voice. Everyone turned to look at Representative Mira of the Sorrenthan, a species known for their pacifism and their wisdom. She was old even by the standards of her long-lived people, and she rarely spoke in council sessions. When she did, others listened. I have studied the old texts, Myra continued. The fragments we have of Gardener teachings, they speak of a time when law existed to protect the vulnerable, not to shield the powerful from consequences. They speak of justice that meant more than following procedures. They speak of a civilization that measured its worth by how it treated its weakest members. She looked at Varenthos with ancient knowing eyes. When did we lose that? When did we decide that efficiency mattered more than compassion? When did we become the kind of people who kill a child and call it proportional? The chamber was silent. The humans are not asking us to surrender, Mira said. They are asking us to remember who we were supposed to be, and if we cannot do that, then perhaps we deserve whatever comes next. The council deliberated for 9 days. Arguments raged. Factions formed and dissolved. Some species threatened to withdraw entirely rather than accept human oversight. Others argued that the reforms were long overdue. On the 10th day, they voted. The terms were accepted. It was not unanimous. 17 species voted against, including the Valith hegemony. But the majority understood what Mira had seen from the beginning. This was not a surrender. It was a chance to become something better than they had been. The following months were difficult. The accountability hearings revealed corruption and negligence that spread far beyond the Morning Star incident. Officials who had spent centuries hiding behind procedure found themselves facing questions they could not answer. The Tribunal of Conscience began its work, reviewing cases that had been dismissed or ignored. Changes came slowly, but they came. 1 year later, Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood on Kepler's Reach, the research station that Lily Chen had been traveling to visit. A garden had been planted there, with 47 trees growing in careful rows, one for each soul lost on the Morning Star. In the center stood a small statue of a girl with pigtails, reaching toward the stars. A stuffed rabbit in her arms, Admiral Chen stood beside Alina. He looked older than he had a year ago, but there was something like peace in his eyes that had not been there before. Do you think it will last? Alina asked. The reforms, the changes, the new laws? The Admiral watched the trees sway in the artificial breeze. They had been genetically designed to thrive in the station's environment. Their leaves a deep purple that would have seemed alien on Earth, but felt right here among the stars. I don't know, he admitted. Wisdom is not something you can inherit. Every generation has to learn it for themselves. There will be setbacks. There will be people who try to return to the old ways. There will be moments when it seems like nothing has really changed. He turned to look at Elena. That's not the point, is it? We don't build gardens because they last forever. We build them because growing things is what hope looks like. We plant seeds knowing that we might not live to see them bloom. That's what the gardeners understood. That's what we tried to teach the younger races so long ago. He placed his hand on the base of Lily's statue. Her name was carved there in 100 different languages. Each translation a promise from a different species that her death would not be forgotten. The galaxy forgot who they were supposed to be, Admiral Chen said. We helped them remember. What they do with that memory is up to them. We can teach, we can guide, we can show them a better way. But in the end, they have to choose it for themselves. Above them, the Prometheus hung in orbit, not as a threat any longer, but as a symbol. A reminder that humanity had returned to its place among the stars, not as conquerors, not as victims, not as children begging for scraps from their elders' table. They had returned as what they had always been meant to be. Teachers, gardeners, the patient hands that helped others grow. Alina looked up at the ship, then back at the garden, then at the old man who had lost so much but somehow found something worth believing in. What happens now? She asked. Admiral Chen smiled. It was a tired smile, worn thin by grief, but real. Now we do what we have always done. We plant seeds. We tend gardens. We watch over the young ones as they learn to walk. And when they fall, we help them up again. He looked toward the stars, toward the vast and ancient galaxy that had forgotten its purpose and was slowly learning to remember. That's what gardeners do, he said. That's what we have always done. And that's what we will keep doing, for as long as there are stars in the sky and children reaching toward them. The garden on Kepler's reach, 47 trees grew toward the light. And somewhere in the great dark, the seeds of a better future were finally beginning to take root.